This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Alex Masfer. I am your host today. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Before I start anything, I want to remind you guys to subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you get those alerts so you always know when we here at the GSMC Network drop an episode of any of our podcasts. Also, make sure to give us a 5-star review. We would really appreciate that as well. Also, make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Whatever you are on social media-wise, we are on there as well. I hope wherever you are, however you may be listening, that you and your family are happy and healthy as well during these times. We have an absolutely fantastic show for you guys today. Later on in the show, I'm going to be giving you my NFC record predictions for the NFL. In my last episode, I gave you guys my AFC record predictions and who I believe will win each division. Today, I will be doing the NFC. Also, later on in the show, I will be talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo, but not his playing, his potential free agent destinations in 2021, as he could be one of the biggest free agents in NBA history that year. And stick around to the end of the show. I will be giving you my top 10 young NBA players. The future of the NBA is always so bright, and with so many young players, I wanted to rank them. So my top 10 NBA players under 25, my top 10 young NBA players. So make sure you stick around at the end of the episode for that. But we are going to start off with none other than Jamal Adams. As you guys probably all know, recently Jamal Adams demanded a trade from the New York Jets. On Instagram, it kind of started with him, kind of ranting, saying how, it's not an excuse with the virus to be paid. He mentioned how Christian McCaffrey had gotten paid, and some other people had gotten paid as well, and he wanted to be the next guy to get a contract extension, but he ended that Instagram post with maybe it's just time to move on in regards to the Jets. Almost a couple hours later, Adam Schefter tweeted out that Jamal Adams had actually, in fact, gone to the New York Jets, Joe Douglas, the general manager, head coach Adam Gase, the front office, all of that, and actually demanded a trade. Jamal Adams obviously has 2 years left on his contract. I believe he was the 6th overall pick in 2017 to the New York Jets. He is widely considered to be the best safety in the league, and I would say he is the best safety in the league as well, at least maybe the most versatile safety in the league. 100%. He gave, like every player usually does when they demand a trade, a list of teams on who he would quote-unquote welcome a trade to, and I think anybody would welcome a trade to these teams: the Ravens, the Cowboys, the Texans, Chiefs, Eagles, 49ers, and Seahawks. Especially with the National Football League, this is becoming more of a theme. Guys in not, the absolutely necessity important position. Every position is obviously important in football, but unless you're a NFL quarterback, a lot of times this happens to you. You are, searching for a max contract extension, especially when you have a year or two left after your rookie deal. As you all know, in the NFL, you make the least amount of money during your rookie year. If you become a Pro Bowl level player like Jamal Adams is, and he obviously would like to get paid sooner rather than later. The Jets seem unwilling to pay him currently at this time, so he would like a trade. I think another thing that's motivating this is the Jets' lack of ability to win, the lack of coaching stability, things like that. So it's no surprise to me that Jamal Adams requested a trade. I think this has been in the works for a while now. I believe almost over a year ago, when he had 3 years left on the deal, there were a lot of rumors that he was going to request a trade specifically to the Dallas Cowboys, who he mentioned on his list of 7 teams. I remember that was a hot rumor, how the Cowboys could be trading for Jamal Adams last season. And obviously now we're here. It's public. It's official. Jamal Adams would like a trade. In the NFL, like I was talking about, a lot of players give these, list of teams on who they would welcome a trade to, and it always consists of the same teams. The Patriots, those high-level winning teams. But a lot of times that doesn't happen. The player doesn't usually go to his preferred destination. A lot of times what happens is they go to the destination that will give them that max contract extension right away. So in a couple of minutes, I'm going to be giving you some of my personal favorites, most likely landing spots for Jamal Adams. But let's do a deep dive on Jamal Adams real quick. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, he's a safety. He doesn't deserve this much money. There's rumors he's asking for $20 million a year, which is widely considered NFL quarterback money. He's just a free safety. He just bats down balls. He just gets tackles. He's great and all, but he doesn't deserve that type of money. I stand with the Jets. I understand what they're doing. Let me tell you what Jamal Adams has done for the Jets over the last 3 years. This year in particular, his most recent year, in his third year in the NFL, Jamal Adams led the Jets in solo tackles, led the Jets in sacks as a safety, also led the Jets in passes deflected, and was tied for forced fumbles and defensive touchdowns. He is Pro Football Focus's, with Pro Football Focus, I think I mentioned this in the last episode, is a data analytical tool that the NFL uses, and they're also a privately owned company that goes, in each individual play of a player's career and kind of rates it 1 to 100. He is Pro Football Focus's, analytically wise, number one blitzing safety. And if you don't think that's important, let me break it down for you. There's 2 things that you absolutely need to be a successful football team. Actually, really 3 things. You need a good head coach, you need a good quarterback, and you need a decent enough pass rush to get to the quarterback of the other team. Jamal Adams, as a safety, had 6.5 sacks last year, which is absolutely unheard of. A player that I can remember that kind of did that type of style with sacks was maybe Troy Polamalu of the Steelers back in the day, which is really interesting. Cam Chancellor was kind of like that as well for the Seahawks, but not to this level. 6.5 sacks to also lead your team in solo tackles, passes deflected. He's pretty much Superman for that Jets defense. So I am really surprised that the Jets aren't paying him. Again, classic Jets, not going to pay your top players and let him, be traded for 50 cents on the dollar or whatever it will be. Now, he's only 24 years old. He's got plenty of football left. This isn't one of those scenarios, maybe like a Darius Slay to the Eagles trade where Darius Slay wanted top money, but he's aging, so negotiation with the Lions was kind of stalled like that. Jamal Adams is 24 years old. He's going to be an amazing football player for a long time. He is that old school box safety that you love that is also not a liability in pass coverage. Maybe the hardest hitting safety in the league, like I've already mentioned, is definitely the best blitzing safety in the league, which is extremely important when you're looking at, blitzing the quarterback, things like that. I already mentioned the list he's going through. He's an absolutely incredible player. So let's get into some of my most likely landing spots for Jamal Adams for the rest of this segment. He obviously listed the Ravens, Cowboys, Texans, Chiefs, Eagles, 49ers, and Seahawks. A couple of those teams make sense. I'll tell you right now, he's not going to be traded to the Ravens, most likely. The Ravens are already in win-now mode. They have an incredible defense. While Jamal Adams would be an incredible addition to that team, it doesn't make a lot of sense for them to get Jamal Adams and pay him when they have other guys they need to pay in the future, specifically Lamar Jackson when he's asking for an absolutely lucrative contract in the next few off seasons. The Cowboys do make some sense. Obviously, he would like to be a Dallas Cowboy. I think if he could pick any team to play, I think it would be the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys obviously have a need at safety. This made a lot of sense over a year ago, before the Amari Cooper extension, even before the Ezekiel Elliott extension. But now, after giving Amari Cooper $100 million a year, Ezekiel Elliott has been paid, DeMarcus Lawrence has been paid, and obviously they're struggling to find the right amount to pay Dak Prescott, the quarterback, right now. And if that reaches a number in the 40s, the high 30s, salary cap-wise, it does not make a ton of sense for Jamal Adams to go there if he wants that max contract extension like he's been asking for from the Jets. Now, if he's willing to come down to that number and make it work with the Dallas Cowboys, if he wants to play for the Cowboys that badly, then I could see a trade being worked out. But it seems to me Jamal Adams would like to go to a team that can win and has the salary cap to do so, to pay him almost immediately. Now, the Texans do make sense. They have a safety need. They lost Tyrann Mathieu to the Chiefs, not this most recent offseason, but the offseason before that. They have a need at safety, but it does not seem that the Houston Texans are in a paying mood currently. While Jamal Adams is a fantastic player, and I would pay him the money he is needed, the Houston Texans just traded DeAndre Hopkins, the wide receiver, to Arizona because he wanted to rework his contract and be paid even more money. They just paid Laramie Tunsil and made him the highest paid offensive lineman, I believe, in NFL history. That's a hefty chunk. And also don't forget quarterback Deshaun Watson, who's the Superman for the Houston Texans, will need a contract extension in the next year or two as well. So again, doesn't make a ton of sense for the Texans, money-wise, obviously does play style-wise. So I did not have that as a likely destination, as well as the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, they have Tyrann Mathieu, who's a very similar player to Jamal Adams. Again, the money does not make sense. They just paid Tyreek Hill. They're going to have to pay Patrick Mahomes extremely soon. They have a lot of other young players that would need money as well, specifically Patrick Mahomes. So it does not make a ton of sense for Jamal Adams to go there if it's about the money and winning. If it's just about the winning and he's willing to ride out the rest of his rookie contract, then these teams like the Cowboys, Texans, Chiefs make sense. Again, same thing with the 49ers. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me money-wise. Again, they have cap space. They just got rid of DeForest Buckner because they didn't want to pay him. Again, I'm not saying that doesn't mean they wouldn't be willing to pay Jamal Adams, but it appears to me that they would more stick with not paying, overpaying, meeting that number for Jamal Adams in a trade as well. They obviously have some more draft capital after the DeForest Buckner trade. I know they only got a first, but they could be in a wheeling and dealing mood there. But it doesn't seem to me that the Jets would also like the 49ers trade as much as some of these other teams I'm going to get into later. All right, so let's get into the most likely landing spots for me on where I believe, Jamal Adams trade offers will be sent. I think one of these teams will be the one that is agreed upon in Jamal Adams. Also, let me say really quickly, I do not believe Jamal Adams will be back on the Jets. Of course, he demanded a trade. He wants to win. He wants his money. The Jets did the standard. What every NFL franchise does is, no, he's in our long-term plans. No, we love Jamal. He's the captain. He's El Prez. We want to keep him here. Everything like that. He will be traded before the NFL season starts, and I believe he'll be one of these teams. Let's start off with one of the teams on the list, the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, this makes a lot of sense. They just lost Dawkins, obviously, to the Saints, and that was a hard hit for Eagles fans. He is obviously a fan favorite. Now, I've done some research, and apparently Jalen Mills is apparently switching from corner to safety to replace Dawkins, but I think a lot of Philly fans would agree with me that they would rather have Mills stay at corner and trade for Jamal Adams, who is obviously, in my opinion, the best safety in the league, and also be kind of a shot at the Dallas Cowboys, who obviously are a big fan of Jamal Adams, and Jamal Adams seems to be a fan of the Cowboys as well. So it'd be kind of a double shot there. He makes a lot of sense for them defensively, fits the Philly mentality, hard, gritty, hard hitting, old school football player. Makes a lot of sense there. I could totally see Philly being the ones that pull the trigger, get Carson Wentz some more help on the defensive end. Philly's always had a decent defense. I think they need more help offensively than defensively, but I think Jamal Adams would be a great fit for the Philadelphia Eagles. Next up is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think this is the most likely landing spot. I'm going to list some other teams later that might have better offers than Tampa Bay. Also, I believe Jamal Adams did come out and say that he would, I think Ryan Clark of ESPN mentioned that he received a text from Jamal Adams saying that he would welcome a trade to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as well. Now, yes, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have made a ton of moves this offseason, and maybe even too much moves, even though I don't think so. Obviously got Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, drafted Tristan Wirfs, all that good stuff. But why not bring on Jamal Adams? They have a big need at safety. Not only that, his old head coach Todd Bowles, who was the head coach of the New York Jets for Jamal Adams' first and second year in the NFL. Jamal Adams had 112 tackles his last year in the Todd Bowles system, led the team. I could totally see Todd Bowles really pushing, the office, the general manager, the upper management of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for Jamal Adams' trade. The Buccaneers are clearly all in. They have a 2 to 3 window with Tom Brady, how much longer he wants to play, however much longer Rob Gronkowski wants to play. Jamal Adams would really solidify that defense that was really rising up towards the end of last season. I believe they were top 5 in yards allowed the last 8 weeks of the season. So Jamal Adams would really fit that team, that defense. Obviously, as a blitzing safety in a division with Drew Brees would make a lot of sense there as well. So don't be surprised if Tampa Bay is the team that pulls the trigger. I already talked about Dallas, but quickly, I have them as a likely landing spot, even though out of all these likely spots, I think it's the lowest. I don't think they have the money to pay him. Also, the draft capital as well. I don't know if they want to part with another first-round pick. How about the Tennessee Titans? You know, the Tennessee Titans appear to be all in with Ryan Tannehill right now. Who knows how much longer he'll be able to sustain this lightning-in-a-bottle play that he had. Derrick Henry, though, needs a big contract extension. He needs to be paid, so the money might not work there. But Jamal Adams in a Mike Vrabel defense would be a scary thing to see, so I wouldn't be surprised if Tennessee was the team. How about the Miami Dolphins staying in division? I have them there because they have one of the most cap space in the league, also the most draft capital in the league. So they're obviously going to be a likely trading spot. They seem to be totally willing to pay big money for a secondary. They obviously pay Xavier Howard top money and recently signed Byron Jones. Brian Flores is a defensive coach. Coming from New England, knows the value in corners and safeties. And I think Jamal Adams to Miami would be absolutely incredible for that defense. And they have the money to pay him right away. And lastly, similar to the Dolphins, the Indianapolis Colts. Who need help on the defensive front. They're really, going all in with Phillip Rivers in a win-now mode. They have even more, I think they have the most cap space out of any team on this list. So I believe that could be a solution maybe for Jamal Adams while they push for the playoffs in a weaker division. I mentioned, I think I had them third in the division, going either 8-8 or 9-7 with Phillip Rivers. But with Jamal Adams on that defense, that record could certainly improve. With a blitzing safety in a division where you need to go after Ryan Tannehill, tackle Derrick Henry, go after Deshaun Watson, obviously, I could see the Indianapolis Colts and the Tennessee Titans both in that AFC South, both going after Jamal Adams. Going to be a really interesting situation to play out, but if I had to bet a team who I believe will trade for Jamal Adams, Tampa Bay. That connection between Todd Bowles and Jamal Adams makes a lot of sense. Philly makes a lot of sense too. Joe Douglas is obviously was hired from Philly to be the GM of the New York Jets, so there's a connection there as well. So I'd say Philly and Tampa Bay are probably the two most likely landing spots, but there's some other teams that could throw in the mix as well for a potential Jamal Adams deal. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, I'm going to be giving you my NFC record predictions, all the divisions in the NFC, each team's record, how I think they'll do, who wins the division, all that good stuff. We're going to be taking a quick break. It's the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I just got finished talking about in my last segment Jamal Adams and his potential landing spots as he demanded a trade. And we're going to stick with the NFL here. So in my last episode, I gave you guys my record predictions and division standings for each AFC team in each AFC division, their record predictions and the standings. So today I'm going to be doing the NFC. So let's just get right into it, starting with the NFC North. I think the Green Bay Packers are going to stay and win that division, but I do think they're going to go 10-6. I do see some regression showing with Aaron Rodgers. He led the league in throwaways last year, which is a really interesting stat. Him and Matt LaFleur, we're not totally sure how the relationship is there, if it's fully 100%. What Aaron's relationship is with Green Bay management. He's been kind of regressing over the past couple of years. Obviously, they drafted his replacement in Jordan Love as well in the most recent draft with the 26th pick. Again, I think the Packers still win the division because I think Aaron Rodgers is that talented, and I do think that the Green Bay defense is better than some people give it credit for. I think Aaron always makes the receivers work, so I do believe they will go 10-6. But watch out after the Aaron Rodgers regression, how much longer the Green Bay Packers stay there and watch Jordan Love sit on the bench. Like I mentioned a couple episodes before, I think Aaron is closer to his way out of Green Bay than he is retiring. I think he'll do something similar to Tom Brady. Peyton Manning, which is finish his career with another team. I've talked about that before, but I think this is a little bit of a regression year for the Green Bay Packers. They'll win the division. They were really a 10-6 team, 9-7 team last year, masquerading as a 13-3 team. They led the league in wins with by 7 fewers or less, which is a great stat to have for one season. But like I've mentioned before, that's not a sustainable winning formula for years and years to come. Again, Green Bay Packers, think they'll win the division 10-6. Number 2, I have the Chicago Bears going 9-7. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, the Bears have been mediocre. Matt Nagy might not be a great head coach. I think Matt Nagy gets a bad rap. I think he's an extremely creative head coach. You know that Chicago Bears defense is going to bring it. I think the Bears took another step back last year, not specifically because of the defense. I know the defensive rankings went down. I think it's because the defense was just tired for playing for Mitch Trubisky, if I'm being honest with you. They knew that even if they only held the opponent to about 17 points, there was a good chance Mitch Trubisky wasn't going to get 20-plus points on the board. Now with Nick Foles there, Matt Nagy has some experience with him. I think as well as the quarterback coach in Chicago has experience with Nick Foles in Philly as well. I think John DeFilippo, has experience with Nick Foles during that Super Bowl run in Philly. I really do believe that Matt Nagy has just been looking for a quarterback to run his system accordingly. And while I am not the biggest Nick Foles fan necessarily, I think if you give Nick Foles the right system, similar to a Ryan Tannehill, he could catch lightning in a bottle. We've obviously seen it during the Super Bowl run. I don't think he'll have that type of success in Chicago, but I think he's a better quarterback than Mitch Trubisky, and I think he'll make that offense more efficient. A lot of RPOs will be run, which is what Nick Foles really thrives in and what Matt Nagy's offensive system is built around. I love Tariq Cohen as well. I love the Chicago Bears defense, and I think they'll have a bounce-back year. I think the Bears go 9-7 and compete for an NFC playoff spot. Third place, I have tied with second place. I think the Vikings are also going to go 9-7. I see a step back for the Vikings this year. I don't see a lot of areas where they improved. They lost their offensive coordinator, Kevin Stefanski. Dalvin Cook obviously said he's going to hold out as long as it takes to get a new contract from the Vikings. So who knows even if Dalvin Cook will be ready week 1, or even if he'll be a Minnesota Viking at the beginning of the season. A trade could potentially formulate there. Again, lack of offensive coordinator. We don't know how the new guy is, how he's improved, if at all, over Kevin Stefanski. I don't want to say a huge regression because I do think the Vikings are a pretty stable organization, pretty stable offense if Dalvin Cook is back. I love Adam Thielen. I think the Vikings defense is pretty good too. I love Mike Zimmerman as a head coach, so not a huge regression, but 9-7 makes a lot of sense to me, especially with the improvement of the Bears. And in last place, I have the Detroit Lions, who just can't seem to get it right, to be honest with you. I think this is Matt Patricia's last year as the head coach of the Detroit Lions. I think when Matt Patricia was hired, everyone kind of looked at that like, you sure? Another Belichick disciple that doesn't appear to, branch out on his own, kind of copycat without the same level of talent or coaching experience. I think this is Matt Patricia's last year, and somebody, please, for the love of God, free Matthew Stafford. Now, Matthew Stafford gets a bad rap. I'll touch on this quickly, but you know who got a bad rap early in his career? Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer and Matt Stafford are very similar to me. Matt Stafford is a extremely talented quarterback that has not had the luxury of a good team around him, a good coach around him, a good organization around him, and also plays in a pretty difficult division. Now, if Matt Stafford can get to another team with a better head coach, more weapons, just like Carson Palmer did when he went to the Arizona Cardinals, watch him thrive. But in my opinion, the Lions just aren't it. I think Matt Stafford will put up numbers. I don't think they'll win a lot of games. And I think they're actually going to have a pretty poor season, and it'll be Matt Patricia's last year there in Detroit. Let's move to the NFC South, one of the most interesting divisions in the entire NFL. I do love the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I love everything they did in the offseason, and I'm still a believer in Tom Brady from a playing standpoint-wise, and Rob Gronkowski. However, I do think the Saints are going to barely edge them out for the division win. I think the Saints are going to go 13-3. They added Emmanuel Sanders. They only got better there. Alvin Kamara's only going to get better. I love Sean Payton. I think Drew Brees in his last year is something to prove. I really do believe the Saints want to win that Super Bowl. They've been choking in the playoffs recently. I think Drew Brees, this is his real last shot. I know, like we say it every year. Is this Drew Brees' last year? Is it his last year? Who knows? I think Sean Payton even let it slip on like a New Orleans sports talk radio show that this is Drew's last year. They obviously signed Jameis Winston, who I think is pretty good and could be a decent replacement eventually as well to Drew Brees. But this is Drew's last year, like I mentioned, and I really do believe that the Saints are going to come out and win this division over, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who I'll get into now. So the Bucs, I think, are going to go 12-4, just one game behind the Saints. I love Tom Brady. I love everything he stands for. I love the offseason workout videos. I love Rob Gronkowski. If they had already had a year together, I would be really inclined to have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers be the division winner. But in comparison to the team experience and team chemistry, this is Tom Brady's new location, new head coach, new coaching staff, and not just Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski. The Buccaneers added a lot of new faces. Tristan Wirfs, how will that offensive line do? Like I mentioned, a potential Jamal Adams trade could be in the works there as well. So I have the Bucs at 12-4. I think they're actually going to start off pretty slow. I don't think they'll win the first matchup against the Saints. I think Tom Brady needs a little bit more continuity and, chemistry with his guys, with this new team. But once they click, there's a very good chance they're the best team in the league. Watch the second half of the season for the Bucs. Not that they'll have a terrible first 8 games, but really watch the second half of the season. Wouldn't surprise me at all if the Bucs went, 6-2, 7-1, 8-0 in the last 8 games of the season once Tom Brady and those boys are really clicking. Number 3 in this division, I have the Carolina Panthers. I'm a huge fan of Matt Rule. A lot of these people think, a lot of these commentators are saying that, the Panthers are going to be one of the worst teams in the league. I think this offense is going to put up points. Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, Christian McCaffrey. I think that's a great offense, and I think Teddy Bridgewater is a guy who's not going to turn the ball over, who's going to be a great distributor, doesn't throw the ball downfield a lot, which is interesting given the Robbie Anderson signing. But I really do believe that Matt Rule is going to coach up this offense, especially with Joe Brady as the offensive coordinator. I think this is going to emulate a really fast, energetic college-style offense, and I believe Christian McCaffrey is probably the best offensive player all around in the league, all-purpose yards-wise. And I think this team's going to put up points. I don't understand this whole thing that, they're tanking for Trevor Lawrence or they're going to go 2-14. There's a lot worse teams than the Carolina Panthers. They drafted, I think, 7 defensive players in the draft. They only drafted defense. Not that it's going to be a great defense. It's going to be young. It's going to be athletic. It's going to be fun to watch. Which is why I have them going 5-11. But this whole mantra that the Panthers are going to be terrible, I don't believe it. I think Teddy Bridgewater is going to put up 20-plus points a game, and if this defense can hold, the Falcons every once in a while and some other teams on their schedule, they could totally win about 5 games. And last, I have the Atlanta Falcons. I think this is going to be the year that Matt Ryan has a huge regression, and they're going to look to move on from him. I believe he's 37 or 38. I think this is also Dan Quinn's last year. They have never recovered from blowing that Super Bowl, obviously the 28-3 game against, Tom Brady and everything like that. Again, I just don't see it. I think this is a big regression year for the Falcons and Dan Quinn's last year in Atlanta. Let's quickly move to the NFC East, where I have the Eagles winning the division. Again, I don't understand the Carson Wentz hate. He's a phenomenally talented quarterback. Yes, does he get hurt? That's great. Last year with absolutely nobody as a receiver and 2 good tight ends and not a fantastic running game, he took the Eagles to the playoffs, and if he had stayed healthy, obviously, in that playoff game, didn't get a concussion, they could have won a playoff game. I had the Eagles going 10-6. Yes, he's better than Dak Prescott. I'll have that debate for another time. I don't care about availability as much as others, as long as you're not missing the entire season, which he obviously has. Carson Wentz is a more talented quarterback than Dak Prescott. He's the best quarterback in this division, one of the top quarterbacks in the league. Eagles 10-6. Next up, Dallas Cowboys. I like Mike McCarthy a lot. I don't know how Dak Prescott is going to work in this new offensive system with him. Who knows if Dak will even be playing week 1 for the Cowboys. I'm assuming this deal is going to get done. But as we keep going longer and longer, it seems like these sides keep drifting farther and farther apart. I know eventually Jerry Jones is going to cave and give Dak Prescott his money. But who knows? Will Amari Cooper start showing up on road games? That's a pretty interesting fact. If that could happen, maybe the Cowboys could win this division. Need more of Amari Cooper in big games, big road games. CeeDee Lamb's obviously an incredible acquisition in the draft. Who knows how he'll adjust to the NFL in his rookie year. So I have the Cowboys going 9-7. Third place, I have the Giants 5-11. I'm a huge fan of Daniel Jones. I don't understand the hate on him either. He had better numbers than Kyler Murray last year, and Kyler Murray won Offensive Rookie of the Year. I just don't think it's their year yet. I do think Joe Judge, who knows if he can coach or not, he could be the head coach of the future for the Giants. He could be a complete flop. But Giants 5-11 makes a lot of sense. New system, short OTAs, New York City, everything going on with the virus there. I think they're still about a year or two away from really contending in this division, so I have them going at 5-11, but a very promising 5-11, specifically from Daniel Jones. And lastly, I have Dwayne Haskins led the Redskins, obviously. I think they're going to go 4-12. Wouldn't surprise me at all. I think they're going to have a great defense. I love Ron Rivera as the head coach, but it's his first year in this new system, kind of reestablishing the culture in Washington. I think that defense will be good. I think that defensive line will be incredible. I'm not the biggest Dwayne Haskins fan. Wouldn't surprise me if they look to move on from him in this next draft, maybe going to Justin Fields, Trey Lance direction. And finally, we have the best division in the NFL, and that's the NFC West. I think the Seahawks are going to win the division this year, 12-4. I know San Francisco just went to the Super Bowl, but I think they'll have a little bit of a Super Bowl hangover. I think some teams will figure them out. Maybe a regression year for Jimmy Garoppolo. Seahawks 12-4. I think Russell Wilson's the second best quarterback in football, only behind Patrick Mahomes. And I think he's maybe the most creative QB in the league behind Patrick Mahomes as well. I really do believe Russell Wilson's going to win MVP this year. 12-4 for the Seahawks. Next up, 11-5 for the San Francisco 49ers. Not a huge regression. 2 games less. Again, I like Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm higher on him than most. I like Brandon Ayuk, the draft pick. Obviously, Deebo Samuel just broke his foot and might be out the beginning of the season. So just a little bit of regression for the 49ers. I think they'll be going 11-5. Next up is one of my favorite and most interesting teams in the league, the Arizona Cardinals. I think their offense is going to be incredible. I think Kyler Murray is going to pop off and have a huge year. But I'm not one of those people that believes they're going to go 13-3, win the division, and Kyler Murray is going to be the MVP. I think Cliff Kingsbury is still unproven, his whole offensive system, how it's going to work. And if he can really coach, I think it's still an unproven commodity. Again, like Kyler Murray, like all their acquisitions that they made in the offseason, I think the defense is going to struggle. And again, they play in the hardest division in the league. Do you guys really expect them to win division where they have to play Russell Wilson twice a year, defending NFC champs San Francisco 49ers twice a year, and also the Rams twice a year, who I haven't even mentioned yet? And I just don't see them winning the division. I think Kyler Murray will have a big year, though. And lastly, Los Angeles Rams. I think they're going to be last in this division, and Jared Goff's job's going to come into question. It's not even about a talent thing for the Rams or a coaching thing. Again, this division is just absolutely brutal. You have to play Kyler Murray in this new offense twice a year, Jimmy G, that defense, San Francisco twice a year, and Russell Wilson twice a year. I think 7-9 is a good season despite all that, to be quite honest with you. I think Jared Goff's job will be in question, and maybe the Sean McVay hype will, simmer down a bit. But that's my NFC predictions for each team, each division, who I think will win. I think they'll be pretty accurate. We're going to take another quick break. On the other side of the break, I'll be talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo and his potential free agency in 2021. So you want to stick around for that. And don't forget, at the end of the episode, I'm going to be giving you my top 10 young NBA players under 25 who will be the face of the league in the future of the NBA. Thank you guys so much for listening so far, and we'll be back after this short break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Right back here, we just finished talking about, some NFC record predictions. I want to switch now to the NBA. And, some people have been talking on Twitter, with no NBA games being played yet, some people have looked towards the future. And, as you know, the NBA is 50% playing and 50% about the offseason speculation, trades, free agency, everything like that. And Giannis Antetokounmpo is a free agent in 2021. People have been talking, making jersey swaps about where could Giannis go in 2021. Now let me just start this off by, he's probably going to re-sign with the Milwaukee Bucks for the Supermax if they go to a finals. But Stephen A. Smith did say a couple weeks back that he has been told if Giannis does not make the finals this year or next year, he will be leaving the Milwaukee Bucks. And that got people making those jersey swaps I was talking about. So let's get into some of the teams that, people have been talking about, and some teams that I believe could be in the mix for Giannis in 2021 to see if he would be lured away from the Milwaukee Bucks. Let's start with the Toronto Raptors, who a lot of people on Twitter and social media have been talking about. Masai Ujiri is one of the best general managers in the league, and he could really fill that void after Kawhi left. Obviously, the Raptors are still an incredible team this year, but I don't think a lot of people believe they're a championship contending team like they were last year with Kawhi Leonard. Teaming up Giannis Antetokounmpo with Pascal Siakam would be absolutely incredible. Fred VanVleet, some of the other shooters they have there, it'd be really interesting to see. A lot of people believe that Toronto could be really in the mix. They will have a max slot in 2021, so that will be really interesting to see. Next up, I think the Dallas Mavericks could potentially make a play here as well. I did some research. They could have a max slot in 2021. Pairing Giannis Antetokounmpo with Kristaps Porzingis and Luka Doncic would be absolutely incredible. And in all honesty, in 2021, I'll get into this later with my top 10 young NBA players, but in 2021, let's say LeBron James obviously would probably still be in the league, but when you're talking about best players in the NBA, I think Giannis and Luka would both be top 5, so that would be an incredible team to see if, Dallas was a team that could potentially, be interested in Giannis in 2021 with a max slot. Next up I have is the Los Angeles Lakers. It's not free agency if you don't talk about the Lakers. It's unclear if they'll have a max slot. Depends on what happens with Anthony Davis and obviously LeBron James as well. A lot of people like to say that Giannis is going to go to the Lakers. I don't buy it. I don't believe it. I don't think Giannis, if he were to leave, I don't think he'd go the Laker route and go play with LeBron or go play with an Anthony Davis. I think he'd go to a different team where he would be solidified number one, face of the franchise type of thing. I don't see the Los Angeles Lakers being the ones to even really... I'm not even sure the Lakers would show interest, because if you already have LeBron and Anthony Davis, Giannis is kind of overkill in the paint, and I don't even think the playing style would really work there if you were able to get a max slot, which would honestly be pretty unlikely to be even able to get that with those two max contracts, especially with what Anthony Davis is going to be owed after this season. But, it's not free agency unless you talk about the Los Angeles Lakers, obviously, so that's one option. Again, I don't see it. Next up, I have the Chicago Bulls, which make a lot of sense, actually, when you think about it. They will have the cap space in 2021. They're kind of entering a new rebuild. They have a new front office, new general manager. Unclear if Jim Boylan will be back there as the head coach for the Chicago Bulls. A lot of players don't really agree with him, don't really like him, Zach LaVine being one of them. But Giannis kind of reestablishing basketball, like Chicago as this quote-unquote basketball mecca, would be really incredible to see, and I could really see it happening in Chicago. They're a dark horse team for Giannis, in my opinion. And let's get into, the one that everybody wants to hear. Are the New York Knicks going to get Giannis Antetokounmpo? Is Giannis Antetokounmpo going to save New York Knicks basketball? I'll tell you to it right now, that's not happening unless some significant changes happen, but I have heard an interesting conspiracy theory, and I'll tell you it right now. Jason Kidd is obviously the lead assistant right now for the Los Angeles Lakers. He is extremely close to Giannis Antetokounmpo. Jason Kidd gets a lot of credit for the player development of Giannis, and there's big rumors that Jason Kidd could be the next head coach of the New York Knicks. Now, if that is the case, if Jason Kidd is the head coach of the New York Knicks, and guys like R.J. Barrett, Mitchell Robinson sort of develop into like B tier, and RJ Barrett kind of becomes a star player, then you could really make a case that Giannis should seriously consider going to the New York Knicks and being that savior of the basketball mecca, New York, Madison Square Garden type thing. However, if Jason Kidd is not the head coach of the New York Knicks, I really doubt that Giannis would have any incentive or any reason to go to the Knicks. And to wrap up this segment, it's going to be a little bit longer here for these last two teams. These are the two teams that have been linked to Giannis Antetokounmpo the most. Let's start off with the Miami Heat. Pat Riley's always, a big fish type of guy, always going whale hunting, as he likes to say. Obviously got LeBron James in 2010. Giannis would also be a perfect basketball fit in Miami. Jimmy Butler playing second, fiddle to Giannis Antetokounmpo with shooters like Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Kendrick Nunn, and also pairing him with Bam Adebayo in the defensive front court would be absolutely unstoppable. So it is a perfect fit, and I understand that. However, for Giannis to really leave to go to a team like the Heat, another Eastern Conference contender, and not go out west, you would have to have some serious confirmation that Giannis going to the Heat would be better than Giannis staying on the Bucks, and that's a little bit questionable. Is the Bucks surrounding cast better than the Heat surrounding cast of Giannis? I would probably give it to the Miami Heat because of the Jimmy Butler factor, but other than that, the Bucks have a lot of nice pieces, a great coach, Mike Budenholzer, but the Heat are one of the main teams that people are talking about when it comes to Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I could see it, honestly. I really could see Giannis taking his talents to South Beach. It'd be very LeBron-like, obviously, kind of going in the same way. But if Giannis, fails to reach the finals, 2 straight years, and the narrative starts coming around, can he win? He can't really win. He doesn't have that clutch gene. He hasn't won a championship or conference championship, things like that. Same thing that was kind of being talked about when LeBron James was on his way out of Cleveland. Then I could totally see how, Giannis would be inclined to go to a team like Miami that fits his basketball style, his work ethic perfectly. And lastly, I want to talk about the NBA's absolute worst nightmare, every NBA's fan worst nightmare, is that somehow Giannis Antetokounmpo finds his way to the Golden State Warriors. Now, if you thought Kevin Durant on Golden State was overpowered, if Giannis went to Golden State, it'd be a completely different story. I don't know how many... Honestly, they would lose like 5 games a year, maybe. It'd be absolutely ridiculous. Giannis' drive and kick play style, which the greatest shooter of all time, Steph Curry, top 5 shooter all time, Klay Thompson, coach Steve Kerr, it'd be absolutely ridiculous, and it'd really reset the dynasty and be even better than the one with Kevin Durant. So that is the worst nightmare. The reason why I don't think it's going to happen, I think, is because Giannis saw the blowback that Kevin Durant got for going to Golden State, and it would be really unlikely of him to follow in that same path, follow in those same footsteps. So I don't think Giannis would go exactly to Golden State. I could totally see him leaving to another team like a Miami, a Toronto, even a New York Knicks, something like that. But going right to Golden State right after Kevin Durant left, that's a little sketchy for your reputation. So I would probably say that's a little bit unlikely, but the Golden State Warriors are one of the main teams that people are talking about, and apparently, the Warriors have been preparing for years to get Giannis, things like that, and that could be really, really scary. But I want to end this, subject on Giannis, right? So Giannis is considered maybe the best player in the NBA, potential MVP this year, and I've talked about he has a lot to prove in the playoffs, and I want to clarify that point. Giannis hasn't had that narrative yet of he doesn't win, he doesn't have a championship, but it's creeping up. The Celtics have eliminated him twice. He didn't make it last year as well to the finals. He lost to Toronto. And right now, the Bucks seem to be the clear best team in the East, with the Celtics as not even like a medium-range second. If he doesn't make the finals, the narrative's going to start. Why isn't Giannis winning anything? But the interesting thing is, I mentioned before that I think that the narrative will go to Giannis, and then it'll be, Giannis needs to do more. Actually, I think I've changed my mind on that. I think it's going to be different. When Cleveland wasn't doing well, a lot of people blame LeBron, saying LeBron wasn't doing as well in Cleveland, forget the supporting cast. I don't think that will be the case in Milwaukee. I think the Bucks will get more of the blame, that they haven't surrounded him with good enough players, more than Giannis getting the blame for not doing enough for the Milwaukee Bucks. Not the same way that LeBron faced that criticism. I think it'll be different for Giannis, and it'll help his reputation. But at the same time, it'll make it a lot easier for Giannis to leave as well. If the narrative is that the Bucks aren't doing Giannis right, and they're not getting him good enough teammates, and it's all on them, that they're the reason why they're not winning, Giannis is putting up 35-point triple-doubles, then it makes the transition for Giannis to potentially leave the Bucks a lot easier on his reputation and a lot smoother. But man, I just hope and pray that he does not go to the Golden State Warriors. I'm not a Knicks fan by any means. I would much rather Giannis go to the Knicks and try to save New York Knicks basketball. than watch him play for Golden State and watch him win 5 straight titles. That's just my opinion. Maybe you can have your own. That's going to wrap it up for this segment. When I get back on the other side of the break, we'll have the last segment of the day, which will be ranking the top 10 young NBA players, 25 and under. Who is the future of the NBA? The future of the NBA is always so bright with new young talent coming in. There's so many young, great players in the NBA right now. It was hard to rank them just out of top 10, but I did it, and I will be giving you guys that on the other side of the break, so stay tuned.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network for the last segment of today's episode, and it's going to be me ranking the top 10 young NBA players. Now, the NBA is full of talent of, veterans, rookies, intermediate, in that age range. But what the NBA has always had that, some other sports have, tried to master is that there's always young talent, always young superstars. And it feels like these kids at 19 and 20 in the NBA are, just as good as these older veterans who are dominating the NBA. And it's really interesting to see, how young the league has gotten, how powerful these young players have gotten. And because of that, a lot of young players have been, leaving these small market teams earlier and other things like that. So there's so many young talent, I wanted to see if I can narrow it down. Now, the only criteria to be fit as a young NBA player was to be 25 and under. Not that, people above 25 are old by any stretch of the imagination, but just NBA years wise, they're considered veterans. So let's just get right into it here. At number 10, I have Bam Adebayo, the center for the Miami Heat. Now, he had a breakout season this year, and I predict that he will probably win Most Improved Player. I think he's one of the best defenders in the league. He's only 22 years old. He's absolutely incredible. He had averaged 16 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists this year for the Miami Heat. While Jimmy Butler was the best player for the Heat this season, you could argue that Bam Adebayo was the most important, both ends of the floor. He's only going to get better. And while he's not the highest center on this list, I think that he is the mold for future centers in the league, ones that aren't shooters. For example, there's a lot of centers in the league who can obviously shoot and shoot well, and they'll always have a place in the NBA. But ever since Steph Curry and kind of the Golden State Warriors and the onslaught of threes, the need for these rim running centers has been at an all-time low, and I think Bam Adebayo fits the perfect mold for a rim running center who still has an impact on today's game and will still be an all-star and an elite level player in the NBA today. Let's go to number 9, Ben Simmons. I don't think Ben Simmons has quite lived up to his potential, but there's no denying the talent he has. Reminds me a lot of Magic Johnson play style wise. He's like a 6'10" point guard, can pass, can dribble, great facilitator. Also is one of the best. He's honestly one of the best players in transition. When he has a full head of steam going to the rim, almost nobody can stop him. He had 17 points a game, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, almost averaged a triple-double this season. Again, if Ben Simmons can really just correct some of the things that, have always been a flaw of his, specifically the shooting. Not that he has to become the greatest shooter in the world, but just a capable shooter, just some sort of threat to keep the defense honest. That could do wonders for him in his career and, him just getting better as an NBA player. And I wouldn't be surprised at all that if one day Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid sort of, break up from the Philadelphia 76ers, team, and they decide to go in a different route and split them up, and let's say the Sixers choose Ben Simmons over Embiid. If you surrounded Ben Simmons with just pure shooters all around him and had a drive and kick type situation, there's no doubt in my mind Ben Simmons could be one of the best players in the NBA. Like, seriously, like top 5. While I do believe Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are both extremely talented, I've mentioned this before, I don't love the on-court chemistry between Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, and some of Ben Simmons' best games of his NBA career have come when Joel Embiid has missed the game due to injury or other things like that. So that's another interesting factor as well, and it wouldn't surprise me that if the team decided to split them off in different directions, while Joel Embiid is clearly the fan favorite, it wouldn't surprise me if Philly made the tough decision of going with Simmons, as he could be better for the organization long term. Number 8, I have Devin Booker, one of the most underrated players in the league. Devin Booker just needs to either be traded to a different team where he can make an immediate impact on a playoff team, or the Suns got to finally get some pieces around him. They're going to be in Orlando this year. They're not going to make the playoffs, obviously, most likely, but we will see some more Devin Booker. He averaged 26 points a game, 4 rebounds, and almost 7 assists this season. And absolutely incredible numbers for a shooting guard. I think he's kind of criminally underrated at this point. He drops 30 points a night pretty consistently, which is ridiculous. Obviously, at that 70-point game against the Celtics. If he can get traded to a team that could actually use his talents, well, not that he doesn't use them now, he's obviously putting up incredible stats, but if we could see Devin Booker in those big games, those playoff games, could be a lot of fun to watch his NBA career just kind of blow up from there. Next up at number 7, we have Donovan Mitchell, another player who's really becoming more overrated. I thought he should have won Rookie of the Year that year. Obviously, it was between him and Ben Simmons. I would take Donovan Mitchell over Ben Simmons. I think he is, Utah's entire offense, Utah's entire franchise. I like Rudy Gobert, but, I think he doesn't have the greatest future in the NBA. I think he's a rim-running center that, unlike Bam Adebayo, can be played off the floor because he can't guard 1 through 5. Not to say that Rudy Gobert isn't great at what he does at rim running and blocking shots, but in the playoffs you want guys that can stretch the floor, be a little bit more athletic, have some switchability, and Rudy Gobert just doesn't have that. And Donovan Mitchell is really the one that has been carrying this Utah Jazz franchise for the past couple of seasons, and I think it's kind of weird that he's so underrated and he's not on some people's list as some of the top shooting guards in the league. Donovan Mitchell this year averaged 24 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, kind of a pure scorer, slasher, and shooter. He's improved his 3-point shooting over the years. He's kind of taken more of a point guard role as well. I think when Mike Conley kind of hit the bench, because he wasn't performing up to like the Mike Conley standards, they went with Donovan Mitchell sort of as a point guard role, and it started to really work out for him in the Jazz. And they've obviously made the playoffs every single year of Donovan's career there. And he's really, if you remember, Donovan Mitchell came in immediately after Gordon Hayward left, and everyone wrote off the Jazz as a franchise. And they actually kind of got better with Donovan Mitchell. So that was another thing that was really interesting to see. I love Donovan Mitchell. Think he's a great player. Reminds me a lot of a young Dwayne Wade as well. Next up, we have John Morant, an absolutely incredible young player. I think he could honestly be a better version of Russell Westbrook, a more, teammate-friendly Russell Westbrook throughout his career. Obviously, I think he's going to win Rookie of the Year this year, even though Zion put up incredible numbers. I think just because of pure sample size, it'll go to John Morant. He averaged 18 points a game and 7 assists this year. Absolutely incredible stuff. Similar to Donovan Mitchell, he came in right after Marc Gasol left, and also Mike Conley was obviously traded to Utah. And he kind of elevated that franchise. The Grizzlies got better because of John Morant, because of what John Morant brings to the energy and the team. He's so much fun to watch. I think he's a better shooter than Russell Westbrook is too. That's always been kind of his pro comparison. It's going to be really fun to see what John Morant does over the next couple of seasons. So I have him at number 6. Next up is Karl Anthony Towns, one of the older people on this list. Karl Anthony Towns is the traditional center that you want in the league. Bam Adebayo fits the more rim-running centers. But Karl Anthony Towns is definitely what you want, everything you need in a franchise center. His dribbling skills for a center are absolutely off the charts. He's got incredible handles, incredible hand-eye coordination, obviously a fantastic shooter from deep as well. I really think it's up between, Jokic and Karl Anthony Towns for best center in the league, and I'd be really tempted to go Karl Anthony Towns because I think Cat can also defend pretty well, while Jokic isn't the greatest lateral defender. Cat's more athletic than he's a big guy, but he's actually pretty athletic and pretty quick laterally as well. Big fan of Karl Anthony Towns. Another one of these young players that is reaching the end. I think he signed a big extension with Minnesota, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if Karl Anthony Towns would want to leave soon. I think it was close, actually, if I'm being honest with you. I've heard some conspiracy theories that Karl Anthony Towns was close to demanding a trade from Minnesota, which is why Minnesota wanted to trade for D'Angelo Russell so bad, and they obviously did, which should keep Cat happy and keeping him, in Minnesota for the long term. Averaged 26 points a game, 10 rebounds, almost 5 assists. Absolutely incredible stuff for one of the top big men in the league. Number 4, I have Trae Young. Now, Trae Young is almost getting into this point where he's a little bit underrated as well. Yes, he's on the Atlanta Hawks, and yes, they stink, but not because of Trae Young. Trae Young averaged almost 30 points a game as a 20 to 21-year-old. Absolutely ridiculous stuff. And he's only going to get better. He's obviously had that Steph Curry comparison. I almost think he's a better passer than Steph. Not that Steph isn't a phenomenal passer, but I think Trae Young gets better assist numbers than Steph does. Again, only 21 years old. He's only going to get better. I just really hope that Atlanta doesn't do what, Minnesota has done for years to Cat, or what Phoenix has done to Devin Booker for years, and actually get him a team that can make the playoffs. We want to see these young players, these great, amazing 20, 21, 22-year-olds in the biggest stage in the playoffs. And I'm really hoping that, Atlanta can be the team that doesn't let down their young players like so many franchises have done for those others. And now we get to the top 3. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a debate here, because a lot of people scream Zion Williamson 1. I have him at number 3 here. Again, this is no knock on Zion Williamson. As a rookie, he averaged 23 points a game, 7 rebounds, and 2 assists. We obviously only got him to see him in about a handful of games, I think like 22 or 23 games. Zion's obviously incredible. My favorite Zion stat, though, for sure, is actually at a certain point when Zion was first playing, he actually technically had the best play in basketball at the time, which was a Zion post-up play with the ball in his hand back to the basket, which is crazy because the NBA has so moved away from that, more to outside shooting and things like that. But a Zion back to the basket play was the best play in basketball analytically for a little bit, which is absolutely awesome to see. Zion's only going to get better. He's only 19 years old. We always talk about who's the face of the league after LeBron, Kawhi, Giannis. It was Kevin Durant for a while too. I think, I really do believe it's Zion Williamson. He's already up there with top 3 names and faces in the league, ad revenue-wise, jersey sales-wise. Zion's up there, was an absolute superstar at Duke. This whole list is about face of, the NBA, and while he's not number 1 on this list for now, he totally could be the best player of the NBA at some point, and I really do believe he's going to be the next face of the NBA. Next up, I have Jason Tatum, one of my personal favorite players in the league. If you remember, Jason Tatum had that incredible rookie season, dunked on LeBron in the playoffs, had all this hype, and then that last year with Kyrie Irving took a major step back in a major backseat role. People were wondering, should, the Celtics move off from Jason Tatum? Maybe he's overhyped. Maybe he's not all that. And then Jason Tatum came out this year and proved everybody wrong. 23 points a game, 7 rebounds, 2 assists. While Kemba Walker's probably the best player on the team, there were certain stretches and certain long periods, even weeks at a time, maybe even months, where Jason Tatum was the best player on the Celtics. He is the traditional wing player, what you want out of the best player of your team. Athletic wing, can guard 1 through 5, super athletic slasher, as well as an incredible shooter from deep. All around, the best version of a player you want to have. Reminds me a lot of how Kevin Durant plays. Not as skinny as Kevin Durant, also not as tall, but definitely as athletic as Kevin Durant. And Jason Tatum is going to be a force in the league for years and years to come. And finally, at number 1, we have Luka Doncic, who I believe is already a top 5 player in the NBA and will probably be the best NBA player for years and years to come. Luka Doncic is absolutely incredible. Played point guard this year for the Dallas Mavericks. He averaged 28 points a game, 9 rebounds, and 8 assists. Absolutely incredible stuff as a 20 to 21-year-old. Think about that. You're averaging almost 30 points a game, almost a 30-point triple-double as a 21-year-old. NBA players' prime really doesn't hit till 25, 26 through 30, 31, 32. Can you imagine what Luka Doncic is going to be doing during that time? It's absolutely incredible to think about, incredible to watch. I can't wait to watch all of these young players grow, be better players. Hopefully, these young teams don't let their young players down, and we will see them in the playoffs. We will see them at the biggest stage. We'll see them competing for rings. All these things that some players don't get the chance to do because their franchise just hasn't surrounded them with the talent. All right, that is going to do it for today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast, follow us on all social medias, leave us a 5-star review, comment, all that good stuff. Again, thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you guys in the next episode.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.